All right, welcome to SuperMeta podcast. This is episode 3 with your hosts, Gianna and Craig. Say hi, Craig.
Hey.
Hey. All right, so for all you like 15 or listeners out there, it's Saturday. So hopefully you drank a little over the weekend.
For sure.
You know, not not as much as Kit Harrington has been drinking
Mm.
lately. You might want to check yourself into rehab after seeing the show, just from how bad it was. We're still talking about Game of Thrones, so you might want to check yourself into rehab after seeing how bad the show was. But Kit Harrington actually checked himself into rehab when the writers told him, "You're gonna kill Danny.
Yeah.
You're gonna have no meaning for your character."
Yeah, dude, like
You were just a tool.
the biggest catfish of all time.
Yeah. So yeah, welcome to episode 3. This is where we're gonna wrap up the season with some spicy news about our favorite actor, and then follow it up with some rankings
Yeah.
of various things in Game of Thrones that deserve to be ranked, because we need to remember the good stuff. This is the only thing keeping us out of rehab ourselves.
Exactly. That's the only thing that has kept me from pure, unadulterated alcoholism.
Alcoholism, wife abuse, that sort of thing, animal cruelty. All those things that Game of Thrones, especially the directors, have been promoting this final season.
Yeah, the good ones. The good old days.
Yeah. I heard in fact recent shootings were all due to Dan and Dave.
Yep, there you go. Heard it here first, guys. Facts. Write it down.
Okay, so the first topic that let's go over is Kit Harrington. Right? He has checked himself into rehab for alcoholism, despite being probably pretty beloved on the show, being the one guy that everybody was like, "Hey, you should be, the king of the North. You should be the one true heir. Kit, you're doing a great job." But no, man, the show's driven him down. What do you think?
It's rough. Like, he even checked himself in like a month before the finale. It's like, I mean, obviously he knew it was coming, and I'm sure it's not all due to Game of Thrones, but I mean, I'm sure it has to do something with it. Like, there's they've leaked the footage or whatever, and like people were showing it from the documentary. They were showing like him just being absolutely devastated when they did the first table read of what he does. Like, they were reading the scene where he stabs Danny, and he's like visibly distraught at the idea of this.
There was also the extra behind the scenes credit where like staff members were just like shoving alcohol into him while he was like they had a keg on him while he was doing the table read. They're getting that alcoholism started early.
Just pumping it right into his veins.
Yeah, pumping it right into his fucking veins. Yeah. Okay. So this is I think this is one of the instances where you say it's not all Game of Thrones, but man, it feels like it's all fucking Game of Thrones, right? Because throughout, I mean, we don't know anything about Kit Harrington's past or whatever, but throughout all the seasons that he's actually been on the show, right? It didn't seem like he had this level of problem, right? It seemed like he was a normal person who had a normal life and has, he got married and that sort of thing. And now, he's I think I would say it's 95% Game of Thrones.
95, yeah.
95% Game of Thrones, and like 5% is the alcohol. The rest is like the fan hate, the fucking insane direction that the writers took the show,
the stories.
The stories. I mean, he couldn't beat Bran.
Couldn't beat Bran's stories.
Yeah, that was the snapping point, dude. That was the point where he thought about like just turning the gun to his head. Just, I can't do this.
He read that scene. He read that scene, and he was like, "The stories." He was like, "I fucking died and came back to life, and you're telling me the stories from this cripple." Oh man.
Fuck, man. Okay. So what? Okay, so one thing we know for sure is that rewrite with the same actors, it's not happening, right?
Yeah, probably not.
Drag like skinny ass, like debilitated ass Kit Harrington out and be like, all right, you're Bran now.
Oh, what a twist of events.
Yeah. You're the guy with the best story.
You're Bran now.
Yeah,
they pet him. They just like petting his head, and they're just like, "You have the good stories now,
John."
Like,
he's just like fucking like drugged up, nearly passed out, just you know, like drool
Jesus.
rolling down his face, and we're just like, all right, get him, kid, get him, Brand,
Yeah.
get him with the best story.
And like
Oh.
going from that, some of the people who might know this might not is that there was a big fundraiser for charity for Amelia Clark. They
Right.
the subreddit Free Folk started an entire giant fundraiser for her charity, which has to do with specifically with brain injuries, right? Like brain trauma. I want to
Mm-hmm.
say right, and they raised a lot of money for it in a short amount of time, and she's already sent out a reaction video to it.
It's not enough money to cure all the brain trauma that Game of
Yeah, the
Thrones.
show did. Yeah, right. It's a step in the right direction.
It's a little drop in the
Yeah,
bucket.
but now they've turned it and they've started to do one for Kit since everyone found out that he's been in rehab. So
Yeah,
it looks like the
it's
fans are
not gonna cover the rehab costs that
no,
Game of Thrones
definitely
fans
not.
are going to. Yeah,
The the fans are showing that they really cared about the actors and what they brought to the show, but
right.
there is no love for D&D.
At least the actors who didn't outright just so outright defend the storyline as it was.
Yeah,
It wasn't
you
an
want to name
Isaac
those two people?
Hempstead-Wright. Yeah, yeah.
Dude, and what's her name? Oh, I can't think of her name. Sansa's actress.
Sophie Turner.
Yeah, Sophie Turner, dude. Like the internet. You want to talk about vitriol? Holy shit, they went after her.
What did she say? I don't think I know.
She, her and the actress she's in with the new X-Men have just been on a crusade about like on social media about defending the show and the writers and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of some of the exact quotes. Let's see if I can
Oh,
pull it up in
yeah,
here.
I think I might have heard about this. Was it? Did you say like internet was trolling something along those lines?
Yeah, let's see.
I mean, I get it. I get it. Like if it's your first role and you had it since you were a child, and then like people are just like shitting down your throat for it, you'd feel so bad. I mean, I couldn't imagine.
And
When you're young and impressionable, and people are just like you're complete shit. Like you either just like cave in like Joffrey did and just be like I'm done with acting, or you just kind of you have to stand your ground because you're still a celebrity.
you would
Or
think,
like
and it makes sense, the two people who had the best endings, like not like opinionated best endings, but like for themselves
yeah,
selfishly, would
yeah,
be Isaac and Sophie. Their characters, one ended up being the king of the six kingdoms, and one of them was the queen of the north. So like they had the best endings. So it would make
yeah,
sense they'd come out and be like, "Fuck you guys, this was
yeah.
great.
Yeah, we had the best stories, man.
We had the best stories. Fuck you
We
guys."
had the best stories, dude. Tyrion said it, dude. Peter Dinklage said it.
Old Peter.
Fuck everybody else.
So I mean, it kind of makes some sense as to why. I feel like if I was in the same situation where like I was doing this show and like you don't really know where it's gonna end up, and all of a sudden people were like, by the way, you know how you've spent like 5 seasons just getting pushed around in a wheelchair, staring off into the distance? Like, guess what? And you're like, what? They're like, you're gonna be the king. I'd be like, holy shit! I would do the same thing if people were like, oh, this show sucks. I'd be like, no, it doesn't. You just don't understand. Like,
So
I think I would do the same thing, honestly. I'd be like, fuck you guys. This is great. I'm the king.
yeah, I mean, I totally think their response is normal for a young kid.
Yeah.
You have one role, and you get something amazing in it. You stick with that for life. You're not Joffrey where you're like everybody hates you, and then you see yourself on the screen. You're like, wow, I hate myself too.
Yeah. Oh, this reminds me, going back to Kit, during
Yeah,
that big documentary they had, they have the scene behind the scenes where he had his little rap at the very end where they like a what do they call it, roll call or something like that.
yeah,
When their last scene, and he gave like a little short speech, and he said something to the effect of, "This is the best thing I'll ever do." And that is definitely speaking from someone who's in a defeatist standpoint, someone who would probably be suffering depression from some kind. And that was interesting to me to see that reaction from him crying and saying this is the best thing I'll ever do. Like that can show you what kind of mindset someone is to self-medicate with
I
alcohol.
I can't imagine. You watch the end of season 8 and then just like
But this
yeah,
is the
kid, that
best
was the
thing I'll
fucking
ever
best
do.
thing you ever fucking did. That ending right there, fucking bon appetit.
Bon appetit. Yeah,
Fuck
so
it. Yeah.
That's rough, and you can just see how some of these young
That, that that's
waitresses.
that's how he actually developed alcoholism. He said that line and then he watched the show and then he was like, "Holy fuck, I
He's like,
regret it
oh dude,
all.
I fucked
I
up.
regret it all. I regret my life
I
choices."
super fucked up.
Yeah, I did, man. Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
all right. So I think the lesson here, the lesson here is this, right? If you're a director of a famous TV show, HBO wants to give you lots of money, seasons, right? The moral of the story is do a better job. Try, like, I know the fans are gonna speculate, and it's gonna happen or whatever. Just do one of the fan theories or something, right? Because the fan theories at some point they make sense, right? Like you don't have to get all weird and like do like weird love lines and that sort of shit, but like answer some questions, make it meaningful, make it logical, like you know, dot all your I's and cross all your T's and shit, because I think if the show ended like gloriously, not in fucking flames, I don't think Kit Harrington would have this issue, or at least it would like probably help if he was sad about it ending and people were like, dude, you were amazing, like you're the reason I continue to like stories. Unlike now, I don't care about stories anymore.
yeah, it's interesting. But thankfully, there's a bunch of episodes from this show that will go down as some of the best TV of all time. I
Oh, for
think
sure.
I think both in my opinion and a lot of other people. So that's something I'm looking forward to is soon doing a rewatch of the whole show. But the only thing I'm worried about is like getting to that sweet spot of like season 4 through 6, and you're just like you're fucking loving it, but then you in the back of your mind you're like, God, season 7 and 8 is coming up.
That's
Like,
You just gotta stop once you're doing the rewatch. You just stop at season 6 and then just be like, it's over.
well, would there be an
That's the
argument
whole
to
series,
stop at season 7, like the spoils of war? Like, I
What
think that
happened?
episode's pretty good, but I think like some people have like when the episode came out, people were like super hyped because that was the scene with the dragons first really kind of attacking in a battle scene, and you saw the scene where you think that Jamie dies, but you find out he doesn't. He gets saved by Bronn. So like,
Oh
and
yeah,
then looking back at it, people like make fun of the fact that Jamie was sinking with his armor, but then Bronn jumped in with his armor also on and managed to get them both out. I don't know. So there's
yeah,
but like I think that's right about the turn from like great TV to like
yeah. I agree. I think you're left somewhere in the middle of season 7 with a good ending if you just stop it there and just leave it all up to imagination. The imagination at the end it made things nice. Just
yeah.
just everybody theorizing about it, everybody thinking about it.
And it's so weird. Like looking back at it, like the whole trek to go north while and within the show while I was watching it come out live, that what they developed this super team to go north of the wall to get a white to bring back to show off to show that it was true. At the time, I remember watching it and being like, "This is awesome," because in my mind it was like I get to see some of the bravest, strongest, coolest, funniest characters all together at once doing this like thing, and then the
Except
scenes
Hot.
and then then they had like the whole scene where the dragon dies and all the action and I at the time I really enjoyed it, but like looking back everybody looks at it very negatively, like why would they do this is the dumbest thing ever, like it's
Right.
so
Right.
stupid.
It has some logical holes.
Yeah, and it all stems from the whole idea of like, and I feel like it's hindsight's 2020 as far as like people looking back at the show's progression. But they said she should have just immediately came through Danny when she came across and just went to the Red Keep, took over, been the queen, and then went north. Like, because obviously she knew she had the power to destroy a whole fucking city in what 10 minutes, five
Yeah.
minutes. So she could have just spent a day taking over, King's Landing, and then went north. But
Sure.
like, the plot.
That is true. Damn. Another reason why we gotta check ourselves into rehab for alcoholism, dude. We just like every time we think of that, dude, take a drink.
Yeah. So it's
All
rough.
right, all right. So talking about if we're talking about rewatches, right? What are the episodes? The best, the bravest,
The
the
absolute
the, the,
best.
the greatest stories.
Well,
What,
there
what are the
there are there are only 3 episodes, according to IMDb, that have a 9.9 rating, which I believe is as high as you can get, in Game of Thrones, all the seasons. There are three of those. I won't name those now. We'll get into them, and I'll rank them my own personal, which ones I think's the best. I think at least one of them is pretty obvious. If not, actually, one of them people are gonna think is a 9.9, but it's not. But it's definitely one of the better ones. We'll get into that. But for me, this is me personally. It's gonna come out of nowhere. I think is if I was ranking these from the bottom to the top, fifth to one, starting off with number 5 episode as far as what I think is the most important was season 1, episode 6, which is called A Golden Crown. I think,
That's the one where Viserion gets
yeah,
fucking melted, right?
yeah, I think
Right.
the things that happen in this episode really set the pace for a lot of what the rest of the season was going to end up like, but people didn't see it. And I don't think D&D knew it, but maybe they looked back at this episode as a reference points. But like, this is when you first have Bran waking up with a dream about a three-eyed raven, which is like at this point, starting from there, is a reoccurring figure in his subconscious. This is the first time you see Bran and the three-eyed ravens. This is already one of your major plot points that fucking got shit the bed like everything else. But it was the first time. Uh, you have Tyrion meeting Bronn. This is when Tyrion's at the Eyrie and he realizes that he's not going to get a fair trial, so he asks for a trial by combat. And this is where he meets Bronn, and that's another big giant story arc that starts right there in this
Oh yeah.
episode. This episode is where in King's Landing, Ned finds out that Robert wants him to continue being the king of the hand, do his duties and stuff, and he's leaving to do the hunting trip. So this is the
Yep.
episode where like um, that Ned finds out that Joffrey's actually the son of Cersei and Jaime, so he's not the rightful like ruler after that. And this is where like Robert's gonna die. He's finding out all these things about them, and this is also where Daenerys is pregnant and she eats the raw horse heart, and like then Viserys says he's gonna stab her and kill the baby out of her womb, and then that's when Khal Drogo pours a pot of molten golden on her head. But I think what's crazy about this is that the quote from her, because this is Daenerys told him to do this, like he asked for permission, so that, like at this point you already saw what personality they were giving her, is that she wasn't really a good person, and this can kind of defend D&D, is that she said after this is when she was talking about Viserys. She said he was no dragon. Fire cannot kill a dragon. This was a lot of setup in this episode, in my opinion. I think it's
Right.
it's probably won't be talked about in a lot of top fives because people will choose some of the more flashy episodes, which we will get into. I think this one was super important in setting
Yeah.
the roots for a lot of things for this show.
Sure. Sure. It proves that the Night King was in fact a dragon.
Actually, a dragon.
Yeah. No, that's the most important thing, and the log
Yeah.
and the logical fallacy that definitely did not need to be explained or anything like that. We're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like this episode. I remember it pretty clearly.
Yeah.
In season 1, it's probably the second clearest episode besides Ned getting his head chopped off.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I think
but
I think a lot of people would probably choose that episode because you see like no character safe because Ned was probably the overwhelming favorite character at that time. So
yeah, the
people will
first time I
probably
saw
choose
that,
that
I was
one.
like, "This is just fake, right? Like, it's just
Dream sequence. So yeah, I think people would probably choose that one over this episode, but I think if people went back and saw this episode, they'd be like, "Holy shit, there's a lot of,
yeah,
foreshadowing and big storylines that come out of this early episode." So that was my personal
sure,
fifth
sure,
one.
okay,
So moving on to 4. Now this is actually going to be a 9.9 episode.
okay.
So there are 2 more, and this means that one of the episodes I have above this episode is not a not a 9.9, but it's the Reigns of Castamere. This was season 3, and this was episode 9. Uh,
Is this the Red Wedding?
this is This is indeed the Red Wedding, but there's also a lot more than that. So like I think the Red Wedding is something that's going to stand out to a lot of people and why this got a 9.9. But there's a lot more that happens to this. So we'll talk about the Red Wedding, but let's talk about some of the other stuff that people kind of forgot because the Red Wedding was like the tail end of this episode. There was a lot of
Right,
things that
right,
brought into this, and you see like a lot of the Stark decisions kind of getting at this point where like Rob decided to go with Talisa and he broke his promise and things like that. You see Daenerys, she's outside of the walls of Yunkai. She's trying to figure out how to take over the slaver city. You've got Bran and all the people that's with him are they're
He was
hiding.
getting his story set up. You know, he
Yeah,
was
he was
like,
just the beginning of his story, and this
he
is where
was,
you see Bran warg into Hodor for the first time to quiet him, which is like the
oh
first
yeah,
time you're like, oh shit, he can control like fucking people. Uh, there was a lot of things that happened in this episode. There was a lot of build up that was really good. But yeah, the red wedding is why this one gets dragged to a 9.9. It's was such a good episode because we saw the episode where Ned dies and it was strong. A lot of people were like, "Holy shit!" And some things that happened up to this point, people had died, minor characters like you hadn't really seen any other major characters die at this point until this episode. And this is the biggest like holy shit. This is the episode I think that sparked Game of Thrones from being a another of those really good HBO shows that people who have the ability to watch HBO like can pay for it, who talk about it. But this is what turned it from being like a show that some people knew about and knew it was good to like a cultural phenomenon. I think this was the
right.
turning point, specifically
I
the Red Wedding.
remember I remember watching all the YouTube reactions from people.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, it's
yeah,
just
like
money.
people
It's
just
gold to do
freaking
something like that.
out. Yeah, people just freaking out, and you know, that's yeah. I think that you're right. That's when you knew that this show had made it, and it was gonna be, you know, it was there for good. You know,
Yeah.
and most you know, it's another main character killing that you're where you're like, damn son, like that was. Oh man, that was our boy Rob, dude. He was like the main guy. I remember the Reddit post too, where people were saying like the show had become predictable. They thought like Rob and Danny were just gonna go up north and kill the Night King and whatever. And I was like, God, please don't do
I
that.
mean,
And
that that whole like episode, like the and I'll be honest with you, I think that well, not episode, but that scene, the red wedding scene, was so perfectly constructed. You got that sense of dread as it was creeping up, but you didn't know
right,
what. You thought maybe it was gonna be something more civil, like a an arrest or
right.
an accusation, something like that. But you didn't know they were gonna take it this far. I mean, I think the first thing you see is
You
is
hear the music, right?
is the
And
music,
then
The Reigns of Castamere, which is what it's named after. And then you see Talisa, right? It's either her or Greywind, his direwolf, that gets killed first. But Talisa, they just immediately stab her pregnant belly. And
yeah.
for like a lot of
Well,
people, that's
I
like,
remember this. You see Catelyn like open Roose Bolton's like jacket, right? And he's got like chainmail on, as in like he's ready for
yeah,
battle, right? And then that's and she you can see it in her eyes, right? Where
yeah.
she's like, "What
And
the fuck is this?"
she like slaps him, right? And then goes to yell out Rob's name, but like at that moment,
Yeah,
Talisa's getting stabbed in the belly, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then they're
yeah.
getting shot with arrows and like I think that's one of the so like they set up the scene perfectly with like this dread, this darkness, and then you all of a sudden they're like boom, first one, Talisa pregnant, you like her, she's getting stabbed in the belly when she's pregnant, and then all of a sudden you're like, well maybe there's a chance that Rob and Caitlyn can fight back. Boom, they're getting fucking just drilled with arrows, like right, and they're dropping to the ground and you see Grey Wind just get slaughtered in a cage. I mean, they just surround the cage and just fucking kill the shit out of it. And luckily the Hound's there, so he knocks out Arya and he takes her, the fuck out of there. He knows what's up. The Hound
Yeah,
always knows what's up.
yeah, he does.
But
He
and then like
he won the Clegane Bowl at the end.
yeah, dude, he was like, I
Best story.
have to do
They're
this.
setting up the Hound Clegane Bowl from there, dude.
Yep.
He started small, dude. He was knocking out small kids at the beginning
And like
and taught him first whip.
at this point, you could have just like, I mean, and I think this goes from an
At this point, you
atmosphere
just end
set
the
up.
show. It's
Yeah,
over.
you're
It's
like, this
over.
is the best it'll ever get. Wrap it up.
Yeah,
But then Caitlyn like grabs his daughter or his wife, Walter's wife, and he's like, if you don't let us go, like I'm gonna kill her. And he's like, I'll find another. And at that point, you like, I think that was for me when like obviously like this whole scene's taking place, but that moment when he was like, I'll find another, like that was like, okay, this show is like unbearably dark, like
yeah,
holy shit. And like the last thing she does is fucking slit the shit out of that girl's throat before she gets slit her throat. Like that was after that episode, I was
yeah.
hooked. I
This
was
this was the episode that cemented it for I think most people. It's
I
just
think
like
yeah, it went from being good to great. I think right
yeah,
after this episode. That's
and
my
then
episode
coming
4,
back to shit again later.
that's my episode 4.
Okay.
I could argue for that episode to be the third one, but I don't know. I think it's a close. It's probably more of a like a 3 and slash 4 for these next
Mhm.
two. So, but the third one, I think, and this will be on a lot of people's list. I think these next three are going to be everybody's. But
Sure.
the third one's Hard Home, season 5, episode
Yeah.
8.
This would be probably my favorite episode, but yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of these are going to be interchangeable. Um, but the ones that I have at 2 and 1, I think are so great that they transcend even Game of Thrones, and they'll be considered some of the best episodes of all time. But
Hmm.
Hard Home was definitely that's why I put it at 3, and I think it can be tied with the Red Wedding. But I think this one from beginning to end, front to back to this episode was just a little bit better. Like I think it just had more throughout the entire episode.
Yeah, I was floored by this episode, just from how it was set up all the way to how it ended. Where it ends, it's I don't know if you've ever seen the show Berserk, which is an anime, but it goes from this low fantasy setting to this high fantasy setting, and you get like a permanently unsettled feeling after you see that moment in Berserk where things go from just like everyday whatever to this moment where you're like, okay, the world is like ending, like the imminent world is ending sort of thing. Like that was hard home for me. And I think that probably touches closer to me than anything else because I feel like, to me it was like a metaphor for potential like impending disaster in the real world. When we don't give a fuck about, not to be like super environmentalist, but it's just like the impending disasters that we don't give a fuck about, and then you see it with your own eyes. That's what it felt like to me. It was just like, okay, the end is actually coming. Like here it is, and the rest of the episodes is just like everything that comes in the rest of the episodes, right? Is just like the triviality of man not understanding how bad it can get, not understanding like what the fuck is gonna happen to them.
Yeah.
That's it was my favorite episode, I think, by far, just because it shifted the paradigm so much for what I wanted or what I expected out of the show.
Yeah, I think so. Like that, the second half of this episode, I think what the majority of people are gonna remember.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the first half had a lot of tying in some of those like right in the middle of the story kind of things. I mean, you're seeing Tyrion like meeting Daenerys for the first time and like going through his spiel about why she's so great and what she means to the kingdoms and like what she can do.
yeah.
You see
And then
Jorah
whispering
in
to
the
her, "I'm gonna
fighting
fuck
pits.
you over in season 8,
Yeah,
bitch.
dude. Wait for season 8.
Wait for season 8. I'm gonna fail you like over and over again. Fuck you, home."
And then you have the storyline with Arya and the Faceless Men coming to like a crescendo. You've got the Septum Anella, whatever he's trying to get Cersei to admit her crimes and stuff. So you have that story arc, which I
Yep.
thought was pretty interesting for her character. This is where you first find out about the mountain zombie. You find out about that from Qyburn. You have Winterfell, you have like Sansa and Theon kind of engaging with each other, and she's saying like you deserve to become, or he admits he deserves to become Reap because all the things he's done. But this is when he finally admits that the two boys he killed was not Bran and Rickon. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. That was this episode.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and then this is the episode where Roose and Ramsay are discussing strategy, right? And
yeah,
Roose is convinced that they can just like wear the army down by staying inside of Winterfell, which is if Roose would have been around for the fucking the long night, they would have fucking dominated. They're like, nah, let's do what Ramsay said, and he's like, all I need is fucking 20 good men, and I can kill these
yeah.
dudes.
Man, that was pretty memey at the time. All I need is 20 good men.
Yep. And
Yeah, but
then
now it's all about the best stories.
now it's all about him. Like the fact
Now
that
it's all
Sam was
about
talking to fucking Ollie in this episode, saying that John was making the right decision to help the wildlings. This is when you first see Ollie like being like the little fucking shit that he is.
the only regret I ever have about this whole series is that Ollie wasn't in the book. Fucking with people.
So there's all that happening in this episode, and then the second half of this episode happens, and
Yeah,
this is why this one's so good. Now, surprisingly, this is not a 9.9, like I said, but it's close. I can give you an estimate. Let's see what this is. Oh, it actually is a 9.9. Excuse me on that. This is a
hmm
9.9. It was a
it's the
9.9.
lowest 9.9 of them all.
Yeah, it's a 9.98.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Point
not enough.
point nine.
Yeah.
It's divided by 9. All right, so this battle I think is when, which looking back on it at the time, it was like, oh, the Night King, he's so scary, and now we understand what the show's gonna like revolve around, and then they subverted our expectations, and like
Yeah, dude.
I feel like
Yeah.
looking back on it, they've tarnished this episode in my eyes because they just made this like big
Oh,
thing
oh, oh,
become
for
so
sure.
true for
They
everybody.
tarnished everything about the Night King. They tarnished everything about White Walkers. Like all of that's gone, right? Because it has zero meaning at the end. Like you get nothing out of it. So anything that's like that's why I think a rewatch is going to be so hard. Anytime they talk about the North, Beyond the Wall, White Walkers, the part where the Night King turns that baby into a White Walker, you're just like, all right, this is meaningless though. you know. Yeah. Good old expectations subverted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the episode you find out that Valerian Steel can kill White Walkers because John actually kills one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many people actually killed a White Walker? We have John, we have Arya because she killed the Night King, and then didn't
Yeah.
Sam? Did he actually
Did
kill
Sam kill?
A
He
White
kill a
Walker?
white?
I think
Might
he
have
actually
killed a
killed a White
white.
Walker, not a White.
Yeah, that's possible.
I'm trying to remember. I think he killed a
It's
White
not that
Walker.
important because even if you kill a White Walker, you don't have the best story, and
You
fuck
don't.
you.
You got to be in a
Get the fuck
wheelchair.
out. Yeah.
But this is where you see like the Night King reanimating all the dead wildlings, and you're just like, so like, it
Yeah.
takes.
That was the oh shit moment.
Yeah,
Where I
you
was like,
take it where it's
oh.
like, okay, he's scary and he can do some bad things because he's kind of like whatever, but then now you're like, oh, he's also like really magical and can reanimate. It's like every
Right.
battle you lose is just like
Right.
multiplied.
It takes that like I don't want to say it takes the gravity out of all the drama away in Game of Thrones, but it just like it makes you feel like how would you say it takes away a certain dramatic element that was like it might have just been too much if that was the whole show by itself, just nonstop like like manipulation and like drama. Because I
I
think
agree.
you see a lot of that in current television, right? Just nonstop
It was a
dramatic
reprieve
shit.
from that.
Yeah.
You went from like the drama and the tension of that to like just like fear, like
Right.
actual horror and fear.
Exactly. The definite oh shit moment where you're like, okay, so this is real. This isn't just some dude who's pretty strong. This is the dude who will end things, except for not. His story
Except for
fucking
not.
blows. Yeah,
uh,
he's not the Night King, dude. He's just the night side bitch.
and I thought, and so like this episode actually had a line that a lot of people who've watched the final season will be pretty pissed about, is where Daenerys and Tyrion are talking, and she says this is her line from this episode. She goes, Lannister, Targaryen, Baratheon, Stark, Tyrell, they're all just spokes on a wheel. This one's on top, then that one's on top, and on it spins, crushing those on the ground. I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It shows how little Dany knows about history, since it was actually just Targaryen on top the whole time, and then
did
Baratheon, and then that's it. It's like
Targaryen number 1.
that's not a fucking wheel, dude. That's just like it's just like a fucking bowling ball, and then like for 1 second there was like a smaller like bouncy ball on top of it, and then now it's like what the fuck's going on?
So just to go from that quote where they during this like this series of the show, they're just like, she's the ultimate good and she hates this and that, but then they've also showed early on she's just like straight up also a cold blood killer because she was just like, yeah, pour that gold on my brother's head. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
just interesting. People like to point to this quote uh, as a harken back onto what she should have been as opposed to what she ended up being. So I just thought it was interesting. This episode was so good, and this quote was in it.
As long as you don't properly remember history,
Yeah,
you can say all the great quotes you want. And,
for sure.
That's me. Yeah.
So these next two episodes, they were back to back.
Yep.
I think anyone who's listening right now, I will give you a moment. I guarantee you can name one of them. And if you can name one of them, you should be able to name the other one. And if you don't know the name of it, you can probably you'll know what it is when I
If you
start
don't
talking
know
about
the
it.
name of it,
Yeah, you'll know what happened. So we're gonna go with the second one.
For season 8, giving you brain hemorrhages. Check out that fund that Amelia Clark has started. It'll help you out.
So I think starting with number two, the best episode, Battle of the Bastards.
All right.
I think I think you could argue for number one, um, as a standalone.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not sure. Two and one again are very similar as far as just absolutely good TV, and I'll tell you why I think the one is number one is number one. But as far as this one goes, I mean, I mean, it was Battle of the Bastards. I mean, the war scene that like I don't think there's I think it's probably one of the best war scenes of all time. I think there are a few that are better, but as far as like feeling like you are going to die, they captured that emotion so well. When you see John being just absolutely suffocated underneath the pile of bodies that are coming up, like I
Oh yeah.
felt like him. I felt like I was under there. It was shot so well. And, just from the very beginning where you see him standing there and he just like unsheaths his sword with all the horses charging at him and he's just like fucking ready to die, but he's going to take somebody with him. And you're like, hell yes. And then all of a sudden, right as they get there, the other horses show up. And I mean, God, it such a good episode.
No, it was amazing. It was everything that you wanted, the penultimate episode to the season to be. I mean, the penultimate episodes of most of the seasons, like season 3 and season 1, I think were really good, right? And so
Hmm.
you had expectations, and it kind of hit all the marks on there. And then I think it's like the ultimate vindication episode because you see the villain get his right with the
Hmm.
whole like, yeah, actually losing. Like this is the first time that somebody you hate actually is losing, and you're like, holy shit. We waited 6 years for this. 6 seasons later, it's like it finally pays off. It's basically what the ending should be, but fuck it. We're phoning it in. Starbucks, water bottles, great stories. Yeah.
Like in this episode, you also had Daenerys in Marine when it was like under siege or whatever, and like the Masters were
Mhm.
attacking the Sons of the Harpy. So like
Oh yeah.
she's like burning the fleets and like and then you have like Theon and Yara show up to help. So like that episode was just two great battles.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It
agree.
was
And
it was
dragons
so
being
good.
shot out of the fucking sky.
There's
You can
there's not
visibly see
much.
them. It's like, all right, shoot him.
Shoot 'em. There's not much to say as far as like individual content, like we've mentioned before, but if you just like go back and watch this episode and the emotions that episode invoke are so strong. Like in my opinion, they're some of the strongest emotions you get invoked,
Oh yeah, for
besides
sure.
anger in episode 7 and 8 of the
Yeah,
final
I was I
season.
was I was clenching my butthole pretty tight for this
It
whole
was it was it was
episode.
that was when I think everyone thought John was gonna die and be like dead, like dead, dead.
Did you think so? When I saw John get revived, I was like, I don't think they're gonna kill this guy off
Uh,
until the end, maybe.
until the end.
But instead of killing him off, they just gave him alcohol poisoning.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man! All
Man,
right,
it's
all
good
right, all right,
episode. Good
all
episode.
right,
All
all
right.
right. How
So,
hard can we beat this dead drunken horse?
not hard enough, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
So, the absolute best episode. I think people can argue for Battle of the Bastards, and I would listen, and I would probably agree. But this is my personal number one, is the episode right after this. It is the season finale of season 6, The Winds
Hmm.
of Winter.
Yep. Yep. All right.
There was so much like that. I remember that episode. I remember starting that episode and it felt like 10 minutes when it finished, and I remember just sitting there being like, "Holy fucking shit!" When this happened, they were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, 18 months before the next episode," and the way everything happened. So like, they killed like 11 series regulars and cast members in this episode. So
Yeah.
like, they just like did this massive culling, and this is the episode where she had already put herself on the throne, and Tommen ends up uh killing himself, and she like blows up the sept, like the Baylor, like the
Yep.
giant
Yep.
thing, and like with all the what's the green stuff called? I can't think of it right now.
Wildfire.
Yeah, the wildfire, and like it's just
Yeah. No. It definitely. I don't know if it helped that like the previous episode was so good. So like you kind of like start lowering your expectations as you go into this episode. You're like, okay, this is gonna be like, one of those like conflict resolutions. And then instead it's like surprise. I kind of got spoiled that I knew it was gonna be insane because I knew from production spoilers that they were trying to get this episode and the previous episode nominated for Emmys. So I was like, okay, something has to be insane about this episode, and it was. But yeah, I think going in, you're just like, okay, it should be a calm. The storm already happened, right? Like Ramsey's dead, and then you see this, and you're like, holy fuck! It's just like more shit's going down,
Yeah, like Marjorie dies in this one because
Yeah,
this
dude,
like
our
the
favorite
sept.
our favorite pair of tits dying.
they, they like she's trying to get out and like the dude's like barring it in and everyone dies in there and then like Cersei captures the Septa Anella and like she has her on the table and she's like pouring wine all over her face and she's like I told you I was gonna get you and she's like I'm ready to die and she's like oh no you're not gonna die for quite some time and she's like fucking calls the mountain in there and
Oh
she
yeah,
just
dude.
like walks out going shame like oh my god dude that
Yeah, it was so good. It was
that
so
that's
good.
what brought Cersei from being like annoying bitch to like
Yeah,
legitimate fucking evil villain. Like that was her
right.
turning point. But it makes sense. Like she was only ever weak because of her children. I mean, she was strong for them, but that was only her weakness. But with them gone, she just fucking full snapped. Which
Yeah,
like
I think I would also say she was weak when Tywin was around. Tywin seemed to like own her in a way.
yeah, but she also had her kids, and like I'm sure she was just a lot weaker when she had her kids. I felt, but yeah, Tywin definitely just shut her up all the time.
Yeah, you're gonna marry. Have you seen that meme where there was an episode where he's like, "You're gonna marry Loras, right?" To her,
hmm
and she's like, "I won't." And he's like, "You will." And then that was the end of the conversation. There was a meme online where it was like, if Tywin was still alive, and then he just looks at her and he's like, "You're gonna marry the Night King."
Yeah. I
Oh yeah,
mean,
no, this episode was great. I was like, I think I was just. Oh yeah, this is the episode where Jon gets revealed to be Aegon Targaryen, right? Where there's that cut from the baby, and then it cuts
yep,
right to
that's how it
Jon's
ends.
face.
Yeah, that's how
Yeah, and you're like, you like it's coming,
yep.
but you're just like, like when it actually happens, you just like, you cheer inside, you know.
Yeah,
I think
this
this episode, if anything, should have told the show writers that like if people expect it and it's executed well, people will love the shit out of it.
yeah, no matter
You know?
how you reach it, as long as you reach what everyone expected.
Right, right. But I think the problem is they were actually just too obsessed with subverting expectations.
Yeah,
Like I
right.
don't know where they thought of that, but
They were like, we're gonna be
yeah,
geniuses. We're
yeah.
gonna do it. Like this is the episode where you saw Sam Gilly and Little Sam. They show up to the Citadel, which was like a great scene. The CGI,
Oh, the library,
the
yeah,
library was beautiful.
yeah.
Um,
This is probably the peak excitement in life. After this, life just went downhill.
this is also the episode where Arya like murders the Freys.
Oh yeah, yeah,
She
yeah, yeah.
serves him
Yeah,
all her all his sons in a pie.
yeah, yeah, yep.
So
I remember.
like
I remember.
yeah, this is a retribution for the Red Wedding and like
Yeah, the first and last time Arya was going to use the face changing ability. She spent 6 years developing. Holy shit, dude!
this
Yeah, this episode it really takes you. I don't know how to explain it. It's like it pays off everything that you wanted out of the show, right? Because everybody's theorizing at this point about who Jon Snow actually is. Right? I don't think anybody really believes he's Ned's biological son,
mhm.
right? And then there's all these hints at this point of who he actually is, and then it pays that off at the very, very end. So you see a lot of drama, you see a lot of people dying, you see a lot of like I don't know, you see a lot of like things end, like the religion or whatever that like what's the religion called? The High Sparrows religion?
It's the new one, right? It's the with all the god. No,
Yeah, who
uh,
really did it? But regardless, it's the end of all the
Faith of the
stuff that
Seven.
Faith of the yeah, that's it. It's the end of the faith, which was pretty annoying, and you were just like, all right, like you feel bad for Cersei when she's getting like shamed and dragged down the fucking like whatever the hallways, not the hallways, the
The
city,
city
right?
streets.
Yeah, and then she gets hers, and you're like, yeah, and then she like becomes queen. You're like, oh fuck, not what I wanted. And then it pays off Jon Snow's story, and that's all, right? That was Kit Harrington. That was truly the best thing you ever did.
Yeah.
And then you should have just ended it there.
I think. Well, ooh, I don't know. This episode, I don't know. I mean, I guess they could have, but I feel like people have been more pissed if they end here because like there were so many things. Like, this is the episode where Davos confronts Melisandre and like he tries to get Jon to execute her, and she's like, "Nah, I'm like still part of this shit. You need me for the war against the dead."
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
he
yeah.
like banishes her. This is the episode where like Littlefinger goes up to Sansa and says she should be the one ruling, not
Yeah.
Jon. Which like even though he dies, like later he's still fucking like
Right,
Littlefinger
right.
like put that into Sansa, which she ended up doing. So like dude knew the only two guys who knew how to play the game, Littlefinger and Varys.
You're right. You're right. I mean, I don't think you can end it here. Only in hindsight can you say just end it there,
Yeah,
right?
please. You have Benjen with like Bran and Mira. He drops him off at the heart tree just beyond the wall, and he's telling them that the wall is the like magical, and it's the only thing that prevents the White Walkers from going south. And this is
Yeah.
when Bran touches the heart tree and he travels back to the Tower of Joy. And this is where the R plus L equals J. It's where you see the baby, and then it cuts to Jon, right?
Right, right, right. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No.
This is the
The
King of the
Benjamin thing.
North chant. I mean that was the King of the
Yeah,
North chant in this episode.
yeah. The Benjamin thing was such a meme, though. I think because I remember when they had the Ollie episode where like they were like, "Your Uncle Benjamin's doing whatever," and then John runs over and then just dies. And I was like, "Oh god, this guy's just like a meme now, right?" It's like, oh, you ever need to like kill somebody, stab somebody, just like your Uncle Benjamin's over there, John. Go
He
get
was
him.
he was way cooler in the books though. His name was Cold Hands.
Yeah, yeah. There was a theory that Cold Hands and Benjamin were different people too, but yeah,
Yeah.
fuck it.
I think they
I
just
don't
I think they
know.
just did like they did with like the Lady of Stone. They just kind of merged their characters if anything.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting though that Benjen was a White Walker but like wasn't under the influence of the Night King. Like what the fuck? Never explored that shit. Like
No, no, dude. Yeah,
nah,
yeah.
fuck that. That'd be too cool.
Unanswered, bro. Unanswered. He was
Unanswered.
just. I mean, is he dead now? Now that the Night King's dead, who knows?
This
You don't need.
this is the
You don't need to know.
this
You
is
don't
the
need to know.
episode of like the first bit when like Jamie just gets back to fucking King's Landing, right? He's been gone for forever, like just doing all kinds of shit during this time.
Is this where he gets his pooper fingered by Cersei?
His what? This is where he like comes in, like looks at her, and he's like, they have like a
Is,
fucking
is this where
look.
she like tortures the woman and then she like pops in and like starts banging him?
Oh, I don't think it's this one.
Okay.
I think that's when he came back the first time.
Okay. I remember listening to a podcast where like they were debating whether like Sheila was like fingering his butt because it like cuts to his butt and cuts to her hand like real close to it and then it cuts away and I was like, well, what do you know?
I don't know about that one. I'll have to check it out, I guess.
What do you know?
This
Yeah,
this this
that's
ep-
one for the rewatch, dude. That's definitely one for the rewatch.
yeah. This is the
Yeah.
episode of in Dorne where Olena is meeting with Alarya and the Sand Snakes, discuss
Is this where they
revenge.
kill off the sand snakes and everybody was like clap, clap?
No, no, this is
Yeah.
where Varys comes up and offers them an alliance with Daenerys.
That's the real MVP episode.
This is
Where they
this
kill off this irrelevant shit.
Yeah, this is the episode where Danny's like, fucking Dario, I'm just gonna leave you guys in the Second Sons here and we'll
Oh
never
yeah.
talk about you again.
Oh yeah, dude. That's
He will never get mentioned for the rest of the show.
yeah. And Tyrion becomes hand of the
Yep,
queen,
she
right?
names Tyrion Hand
Yeah.
of the Queen.
Yeah, Tyrion, you're clearly gonna help me out. Fucking Dario, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
He's gonna stay here.
And this is the episode where like it had the most hype ending ever. It was fucking Dany and all the ships, fucking sailing to Westeros and her flying over the top of them with their dragons and like it was like the most hype shit ever. And everybody was like, 18 months, that's crazy. I can't wait. And then look what we got. We got fucking
Yeah.
season 7 and 8.
I mean, okay, yeah, like you just. I mean, I say you ended at episode 6, but I realized, or season 6, but I realized that is truly only hindsight as to how bad it went. I mean, and season 7 had one of my favorite episodes. I think. No, it didn't.
Which episode
No,
are
it
you thinking
didn't.
of?
Just kidding. I was thinking of The Door.
That's
Why
exactly
can't
what
we-
I was gonna mention next. I got that for you, bud. That's season 6, episode 5.
Yeah. That was yeah.
That I
That
think
was
that's the best. I think that's one of the best individual small scenes in the
yeah.
entire show. And I think it's just one of the best written pieces of literature of all time too, because that was actually already written by George R. R. Martin. He'd already told them that's the way he had set up Hodor, and I think
Hmm.
that was one of the biggest mind fucks of the
Yeah.
show, for
Yeah.
sure.
For me, like outside of the spectacle, I think if I was to say the two episodes that I feel really like closest to, and the episodes that I would truly like, I loved, not just like the hyped feeling, but like I truly loved, it'd be Hard Home and The Door, because it sets a completely different precedent for the rest of the show, right? It changes everything about. I know like people don't like it when like there's like rules set in the show and then suddenly all the rules change or whatever.
Hmm.
But for me, it's like it's the perfect way of. It means like you've told the story perfectly when you can change all the rules, right, about something, and it's okay. You feel okay. Like so when Hard Home came in and like the Night King shows up and you're just like holy shit, like it's over. It was okay because it was told in such a brilliant way, right?
I
And the
agree.
door to me was the other part where I was just like, we get to explore the past. We get to see Bran's true ability as the three-eyed raven, right? He might be the result of all the stuff that we're seeing, right? All the shithole that we're like, that the world is in, right? It might be because of Bran. And he can go back in time and like manipulate things. None of that actually happened, right? Because fuck that guy, right? Like
Yep.
he's just got great stories. But like, when I saw the door, when I saw it ended, it was such a sad ending. But at the same time, it was the perfect way to tell like the story of like what Bran could actually do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it took this very real, grounded drama and was like those two episodes, like you're saying, were like the oh by the way, it's we're turning it up to fucking 11. Like
Right,
we're gonna
right,
introduce all these supernatural elements. We're like this Night King. Before you're kind of like he's a nursery story and like he's only like
exactly,
as scary as he is, from a distance because the wall. He's so far away. What can he really do? Is he real? And then all of a sudden, Hard Home hip happens, and not only do they kind of win the battle, kind of, but they get overrun and they have to like retreat. Then you see the inevitable when he stands there and races everyone they just killed, and it's just like fuck.
exactly.
Oh man,
I,
man,
I think that's yeah. I mean, I think that's my personal bias that I really like it when that's my personal like idea of subverting expectation, right? Is all the rules have been set up for so long, and then you brilliantly like bring about a way in which like there's a completely new rule
yeah.
that it doesn't need like narration to explain or anything like that, right? It's just like it's the visuals, the action, it tells the story and it explains the rules, and it just leaves you wondering like what's next, right?
And I think that's where we see the genius of George R. R. Martin and not
Yeah,
David.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
such
scene was a
such a
great
shame
scene.
that Star Wars is gonna be like going to shit after this.
Well, we were talking about it. We were talking about, I didn't realize they were the ones who were given the keys to the Knights of the Old Republic
Yeah,
storyline.
I
So,
think that might just be a rumor, but I believe it was confirmed that they are doing the old
well, if
Republic or Knights of
they
the Old
are
Republic.
like any of you who've ever played the games, there's Knights of the Old
Yeah,
Republic 1 and 2,
no,
and their
it's really cool.
storylines are, I think, the best. Well, there probably are some better ones, like some books and stuff that have been written as far as the Star Wars universe, recently. But I think this one, like the KOTOR
Yeah,
storylines, are top notch. Like they are very, very fucking good.
they're good. They are definitely good. I don't know if you ever played the MMO. I haven't, but I've seen the trailer. If you see like the storyline trailers for that stuff, it is insane.
Yes,
It
I
is like
agree.
people sit there wanting movies of the stuff from KOTOR because they're like, it's no longer the like I hate sand, it gets everywhere memes. It's
Yeah.
like it's an actual story. It's like a sad, detailed story. And I was just like, yeah, love it if we could ever get that to happen. I
Because
think
it's also at a time when it's more badass. Because like the 9 Star Wars movies that have happened now, the vast majority of them have been set in a place where there aren't very many Jedi's or Sith.
right,
So
right.
your story's left more grounded in reality with blasters and spaceships and stuff. But during this time, like every other dude was like a fucking badass. Like people were like it was like the Wild Wild West where like everyone had a fucking pistol and a rifle.
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh
everyone
yeah.
had lightsabers and could use them, and the Force was super abundant and
Yeah.
like strong.
It's sweet. It's gonna be awesome. Hopefully,
I think it can be absolutely fantastic. So
if somebody writes, because there's so much story already in there, I think Dan and Dave will do a good job as long as they don't phone it in. But I think the reason they phoned in Game of Thrones is to not phone in this part, right? Like,
it's very
because they
possible. I
wanted
agree.
this. Yeah. And you can see their brilliance.
Dude, it's like that meme, the one with the guy walking with the girl and he's like looking back at another girl. It's
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
Dan and Dave walking beside Game of Thrones,
Game of
looking back
Thrones,
at it's
yeah.
fucking Disney.
It's Disney. It's like we give you Star Wars, three Star Wars movies,
Three
and
Star
like
Wars
holy
movies, yeah.
shit, dude.
And they're like, hell yeah, dude. Movies are way better than shows. You get remembered for that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah, it's gonna be man.
we'll see. We'll get to talk about it
We'll
eventually
see.
when it comes out.
Yeah, hopefully when it comes out, which is 2025, this podcast will still be around. We'll have sponsors. The new cannabis campaign or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Cigarettes,
we'll be running for office.
alcohol. Yeah, we'll have an alcohol sponsorship right next to the rehab sponsorship.
Of course.
So
So those other scene that I actually wanted to mention, because I had mentioned this in our first podcast, and it was season 2, episode 2, and it was just the name of it was called the Nightlands. There was actually a small council meeting where Cersei rejected Robb's term of peace, and there was a warning actually from the Lord Commander Mormont that the dead are rising beyond the wall, and that was a
yeah,
threat that only Tyrion took seriously. So like I thought that was what I was mentioning that time about the hand or whatever from the White.
Mhm.
That was the episode that happened. So that kind of set up stuff too. You see that like Cersei isn't gonna ever take peace. She'll never settle. She'll never kneel. She'll never bow. And also she never took the dead above the wall seriously. So this kind of played up that
right.
season.
But given how the show was written, she had absolutely no reason to, right? Besides seeing that one instance, right? The dead never came to King's Landing after that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like if you saw one instance of something and some like a bunch of people you hated were there, like setting up, like pulling out this treasure chest and being like, look at this thing. You'd just be like, this could just be fake, They could just be fucking with me, that sort of thing, Yeah, I really didn't like that. Like the dead never came to King's Landing. Nothing about the dead was relevant to King's Landing. Cersei had no change of heart. She stared out a window for fucking a whole season.
Whole season.
What was the most paid actress or something like that, right? Besides like Tyrion, I think. Yeah. I mean Tyrion not being an actress, but was like the second or like first or second most paid actor in the show.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Just,
ever since that, yeah. So I think that was our, at least that's my 5 favorite. I think the 5 biggest impact episodes. There's definitely arguments to move here and there. And I'm sure when we put this on YouTube, you're more than welcome to tell me what your top 5 are in the comments.
Drop your comments and sponsorships in the comments section below.
Please.
Name your sponsorships. I don't really care that much about your comments.
Yeah, let him like he wants your sponsorships. I want your comments. I want to know how wrong I am.
Yeah, put your comments in this, in below, and like really like dial up the engagement on these videos that we have.
Yeah. And if you're not smashing that like
if you're not smashing that like button, you're really not helping out Kit Harrington or Amelia Clark's charity fund. So
yeah,
guys.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
All right, well I would say that's a pretty good wrap for today. Yeah. I think next week we will actually talk about something different. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. We're gonna get back to the theme of this podcast. Getting meta with it.
Getting meta with it.
We're gonna talk about all the different. How would you say it? All the different controversies that are really sparking some debates out there.
For sure. So if there's anything you're interested in, let us know. I will definitely cover some different things. We're looking at a lot of different stuff. Obviously we started Game of Thrones because it was the biggest thing going on right now. Something we're personally invested in. So if there's anything you're personally invested in, let us know.
We're gonna go to the rehab center that Kit Harrington's at and just stay with him.
Yeah, we're just gonna hang out.
We're just gonna hang out, man. This is still a Game of Thrones podcast, actually. Just kidding, guys.
Gotcha.
It's Game of Thrones podcast until the end, dude. Unlike the
the
end of Dave, dude, we just aren't gonna phone it in, dude. We're gonna go all the way, dude.
Yeah,
We're gonna
you
go.
wait till those spin-offs come out and we start talking
Yeah,
about those from the beginning.
yeah, dude. I'm going to the filming of the spinoff with my drone and just like
Oh yeah, we're gonna get you
getting
guys some
ready, dude.
sneak peek
Yeah,
footage.
I'm getting ready, dude. Oh yeah, and since I'm from New Mexico, dude, I'm just gonna sit at George R. R. Martin's house like daily, dude.
Yeah, daily,
And
just
just
outside. Be like,
yeah,
hey
just
George,
outside, be like, George,
George, finish the book.
George, what's happening in the
George, what
spinoff?
happened? Who's the Lord of Light? What's he really
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, exactly. Why does Bran have the greatest story? Tell me that.
Why? Why did you let
Tell
him
me
do
that.
this,
Tell me
George? Why?
that. Yeah. George, why do you hate us?
Please do that.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, you 15 or 16 listeners.
Oh yeah, you're the best people ever.
You're the best people ever. Once we figure out some sweet, sweet stuff we can sell you guys through Amazon affiliate links, we will. No reviews. We're just gonna put
Yeah.
some stuff down there. Candy
Sweet
bars.
swag that you can wear and just be like,
Yeah,
yeah, I was here first.
does Amazon sell alcohol?
I don't know.
Okay. We can't affiliate link that. Does Amazon sell like hangover remedies or something? We can link that.
We're gonna buy a bunch of it and send it to Kit.
Yeah. I'm always down for affiliate linking some stuff that we use in our daily lives.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah! All right. Thanks for listening. This was episode 3 of SuperMeta Podcast. Next week, episode 4. It'll be a surprise.
Yep, and we might have a special guest joining us, so get ready.
Exactly. So it's just like a finger in your butthole, dude.
Just like it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you for coming and listening. We'll see you later.
All right. Later.